I would like now to invite Ada Segre and Yulia Leonova. Ada Segre is a graduate in ornamental horticulture at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and the University of Bologna. She has been professionally involved in the conservation of several historic gardens in Italy, and since her return to Israel, she's undertaken applied research on historic landscapes such as the Templar colony of Sarona, the White City, the Weizmann Institute, the Bialik House Garden the Bialik Garden in Tel Aviv, Ramat HaNadiv, and more. She teaches art history at the Technion and conservation of historic landscapes at the Western Galilee College, along with professional consultancy. Yulia Leonova has a master's degree in art history from the Russian State University of the Humanities and researches the Garden City movement, modernism, expressionism, and more. And she has also published articles on the house of Chaim Nachman Bialik in Tel Aviv and that of Gorky in Moscow, and dealt with light and shadow in Israel, and Patrick Geddes' inner gardens of Tel Aviv. She's presented in various international conferences in St. Petersburg, Moscow, and Porto, and participated in the Venice Biennale for Architecture in 2018. And I think this is a good continuation of our previous short discussion of the Weizmann house and, of course, our tour. And their lecture concentrates on the garden and architecture of the Villa Weizmann in Rehovot. So
thank you for the invitation and the opportunity of talking about this incredible place. We will split our presentation. Yulia will start the first part, and I will complete on the second part. Please, Yulia.
So let me begin. In 1934, Erich Mendelsohn was commissioned his first building in Eretz Israel, a villa for Chaim Weizmann, a president to be in a state to be. The outstanding status of the client, the zenith of the glory of the architect, his spiritual affinity with the land of Israel, the exceptional topography of the site, everything promised that a masterpiece was going to be created. Later, recognized as such, the architecture of Weizmann House has been widely researched, less so the landscaping of the estate, while the ensemble in its entirety illustrates Mendelssohn's approach to the unity of them. The house, as an architectural sculpture, stands on the top of the hill, which functions as a podium. Originally, it was overlooking the distant landscape to the east, towards the Judean hills, and to the west, towards the sea. The distant views are now blocked by buildings, unfortunately. The entrance road, a winding drive lined with cypress trees, this green one, terminates in a hippodrome-shaped traffic island. It provides a ceremonial approach to the estate for those entering by car. The road starts from the entrance with the porter's lodge, a common feature. What is better? Like this, it makes some noise, yes? Does it? Yeah, okay. So, the long ride allows to appreciate the estate through a sequence of ever-changing side viewports. The layout includes a garden and citrus orchard. The distinctive feature of great importance is the series of terraces supported by dry stone walls, trockené mauern. There are two kinds of curling terraces, the concave and convex ones. That will be revealed later. If However, there was a place in a nearly pristine condition, well preserved and managed, that is the Villa Weizmann in Rehovot. It is a rare situation which offers an opportunity to relate to the unity of architecture and garden, Mendelsohn landscape design and vision. The second advantage is to see some trends in garden design of the first 3 decades of the 20th century, which influenced Mendelssohn. And this is very important from the historical and conservation perspective. The general trends of garden design are the following: organicism, architectonics, expressionism, and mysticism. And that will be revealed whilst analyzing the garden general setting and its layout. The well-known expressionist sketches by Mendelssohn, the 2 arcs outlining sky and earth, and the building between them, are literally embodied in the Villa Weizmann setting. That unity of a building and a landscape was an important feature of the organic architecture concept. One of the main promoters of that approach was Frank Lloyd Wright, an architect highly respected by Mendelssohn. And this is one of his principles. The site should be enhanced by the building, and the building derives its form partially from the nature of the site. Sometimes this is done by similarity, sometimes by contrast. That fully corresponds with the Villa Weizmann setting, where the garden is an inseparable part of the Mendelssohn volumetric composition. In January 1936, Mendelssohn wrote to Louise, his wife, "The shell of the house is almost complete, a royal, stored where it must be, rising where the terrain falls, Judea and the valleys belonging to the house, open to the vastness, withdrawn in the patio, which already seems cool and perspective." Let's just refresh how it looks now. Few photos. And now let's take a closer look at the plan. It is an eclectic design with a strong regular geometry of straight lines and right angles mixed with curling lines. Some of the semicircular shapes of the garden beds close to the building echo the paramount Mendelssohnian architectural elements, the rounded tower and balcony. Today, the hippodrome-shaped traffic island is one and the same as the original design. Some modifications occurred in the outline of the flower beds adjoining the western facade. The rose garden. It paraphrased the shape of the central building tower, and it is now less readable than in its early days. These and other features, whilst they are characteristic of Mendelssohn's style, also comply with the concept of the architectonic garden, or to be more precise, the architektonische Garten, which derived from the arts and crafts garden ideas and preceded garden modernism. This term was popular mostly in Germany by its leading promoter Hermann Boethius, who had been influenced by similar ideas fostered in England by Reginald Bloomfield. The claim was that only the architect who designs the house should design the adjoining garden. There should be a functional analogy between the rooms in the house and the garden room and compartments. Further, there should be a geometrical parallelism between shapes of the house and shapes in the garden. Some examples are presented on the slide. Here we see how the axes unify the house and its landscape. One from the south, a little bit twisted, but I will say only about the main sides. From the south to the north, bisects the traffic island, crosses the hall and the rose garden attached to the building. The second is the main symmetry axis of the house from the east to the west. It bisects the balcony and the tower, continues outside through the patio and pool, set as an ancient Roman atrium, traversing the lawn, ideally reaching the Mediterranean Sea. It is noteworthy that the axis of symmetry of the Einstein Tower and the De La Warr Pavilion are also directed towards the seas. Also, Potsdam is so distant from the sea. What? Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Also, Potsdam is so distant from the sea that it is harder to imagine it in comparison with the pavilion in Bexhill-on-Sea. There is another parallel between Villa Weizmann and the La Warr Pavilion by Mendelsohn and Chermayev, where the same axis passes through the building, its glass tower, the exedra of the retaining wall. Erich Mendelsohn planned a sculpture as an eye-catcher on that axis. It was meant to be Persephone, who awakens to the joys of the earth in the spring. It's a citation from Wittig, Mendelssohn's biographer. A similar idea can be found among Erich Mendelsohn drawings for the Villa Weizmann. And besides that, as he wrote about the sculpture Hannah Orloff in one letter, saying, "She then wants to stay too, if only out of consideration for all these statues, which are never missing my sketches. But unfortunately, neither at the De La Warr Pavilion nor at the Villa Weizmann were the sculptures implemented." With regards to vertical planning, the Einstein Tower, the De La Warr Pavilion, and Villa Weizmann with a green basement are literally growing out of the earth. To connect the ground with the sky, Mendelssohn visualizes a beam of light as a vertical axis. In the Einstein Tower, there was a real ray of light. In the Metal Workers' Union and in the De La Warr Pavilion, Mendelssohn designed a long vertical lamp. That may seem to be just an element of interior design, but in fact, it is a representation of his cosmogonical vision of architecture linking celestial and terrestrial. For Villa Weizmann, Mendelssohn also designed such a long lamp that was supposed to extend through the whole tower height. To the left is my 3D model of the lamp, which unfortunately was not implemented. So let's return from heaven to earth. Erich Mendelsohn masterfully uses the natural topography of the hill as it follows from the drawing to the right. So by the minimum means, he forms a contraposing play of high and low garden levels, a little bit as a yin-yang shape. It's arranged with the curved step terraces, the most outstanding physical structure of the garden that will be revealed later. The winding paths of the garden remind us of Mendelssohn's closeness to the Wendingen Journal, the voice of the Amsterdam Architectural School. Its editors, Matthew Lauwerix, a leader of the Amsterdam Architectural Theosophical Bahana Lodge, and Weideveld, a friend of Mendelssohn, believed in the connection between a mathematical architectural order, nature, and cosmos. Their strong passion with the Kundalini concept was represented by meanders and spirals. Parallel to these ideas, Expressionist garden design developed in the 10th and 20s, when Expressionist architecture generated attempts to design Expressionist gardens. They adopted dramatic and even bizarre shapes, such as zigzags, arches, spirals, as apparent in Allinger's, Pneuwerk, Gulbenkian, and other authors' garden plans. The influence of expressionist gardens was mainly theoretical, as very few gardens were implemented according to these principles. The use of such shapes by Erich Mendelsohn indicates that he was also influenced by mystical and expressionist ideas. By the 30s, Mendelssohn was in the process of abandoning such shapes in his architectural work, but he still used them in his landscape design. This is not surprising, as often there is a time lag between changes in garden design and architecture. This makes the Villa Weizmann garden a unique survivor of such earlier trends, and probably even the only one surviving example.
In 1936, Mendelssohn wrote about the terraces at the Villa Weizmann. The house itself, still a naked child with ruffles and frills on the green, but already stretched out over the 3 amphitheatrical terraces of the great slope. Clean, rough and strong, waiting for trees, shrubs and blossoms, breaking corners and embracing its hard edges in soft arms. In this picture, taken in 1937, when the garden was newly planted, it is possible to observe the dry walls supporting the curling terraces. Next. The amphitheatralischen Terrassen shown here define a this is citation from Mendelssohn's, shown here define a theatrical space. But since they're curling, they're different from classical theatrical spaces in gardens, amphitheaters, theaters, circuses, and hippodromes. Their shape seems to stem from expressionist ideas, and the combination of the two is quite unique, as the result is a sort of expressionist theater. In this case, as in other known examples, the terraces are decorated with a variety of plants, which are the object of admiration. They are placed in the position of the spectators. However, they also provide at the same time the show in a reversed relationship between observer and observed. The topographical setting recalls the well-known Dünenskizzen revealed by Regina Stephan and quoted by many during the course of this conference, which Mendelssohn executed in 1920 on the Baltic Sea. The vision of the Villa Weizmann as a ship crossing the sea with the winding terraces resembling waves was noted by Ita Heinze Greenberg. It is possible to add that the idea of the dune is complementary, as the house sits on a dune of sand, and sand dunes are part of the sea landscape. And I may add also that the stone used for the retaining walls of these winding terraces are made of sandstone, what is locally known as kurkar. So we got this sort of play with sand in many versions in this place. Among other noteworthy features of the Villa Weizmann garden are the rows of cypress trees bordering the drive. The drive is accessory to the observation of the house on the dune from ever-changing angles in a progressive increase of expectation, in a build-up of expectation as the drive proceeds towards a house and traffic island. Next one. The garden layout to Villa Weizmann is comparable to the Villa Schokens garden's layout, as they both share the same flowing lines of the terraces. Unfortunately, the Villa Schokens garden does not survive, and it is only possible to compare the plans, as you can see them here. Mendelssohn was familiar with the trends of his time, and the layout of the Villa Weizmann reflects some of them: organic architecture, the architectonic garden, expressionism, and mysticism. However, the final result is a very personal interpretation of these ideas. The position of the villa on the hill recalls Mendelssohn's dune, as well as the views from different viewing angles. The garden layout paraphrases the building lines in its vicinity, especially with regards to the semicircular lines which are present in both house and garden. The interplay between vertical and horizontal, the contrast between light and shade are also shared by the building and its surrounding grounds. The hemicycles and hippodrome shapes of the garden beds are reminiscent of theatrical spaces, as well as the terraces, according to a long-standing tradition in garden design, reinforced by topographical reconstruction of Pliny the Younger's villas resumed during the second half of the 19th century. However, the adoption of theatrical spaces enacted in a fluid manner with this sort of wavy and lines, with its set of spiraling concave and convex terraces, can be ascribed solely to Mendelsohn. These features are quite unique and rare, as the only comparable example we know was the Villa Scholken gardens that is now lost. The garden at Villa Weizmann is important for its integration with the architecture, as well as in its own right. Its design and unique features, as well as in its integrity and good level of presentation, as we're talking within the boundaries of the site, that's the case, make it a historic garden of international and outstanding importance. Of course, you may claim that the landscape outside the garden has changed, been modified, the buildings are blocking the distant views. But that's beyond the control of whoever owns the garden. The garden layout is in its integrity is there. There are very, very minor modifications. The eastern part has been modified after the death of Chaim Weizmann, but all the rest is more or less complete. And so in this respect, it's a very rare example, and I think very valuable at a local and international level. Thank you.